autism increasing, or are we just getting better at identifying it?
That's a $1,000,000 question because I would say even the population is increasing. So we know in any population there is 1 to 2% with disabilities, right? Once a child is diagnosed with autism, I don't think it is important to note what is the severity at that point. Because at that point, invariably, they will have more symptoms because they've not been given any kind of help. So at that point, it's just whether you have these symptoms or you don't have these symptoms. Just keep the classification very simple.
Do you also cross-examine the parents whether they are also having any neurological conditions?
Mothers burning out, mothers going through difficult times, and
They never ask you for the help.
No. 1 or 2 mothers have asked me. That's it.
That's it. Child be wrongly labeled as an autistic.
Very possible, especially if you don't have that knowledge of what you need to look for. An autistic child may have some ADHD symptoms. An ADHD child may have some autistic symptoms. An ADHD child may have learning problems. An autistic child can have intellectual difficulty. A lot of symptoms overlap, right? So therefore, when we are looking at therapies, it is basically a mode of developing skills.
Is there a regulatory body who controls these therapy centers? Because there is a lot of noise, there are a lot of scams which are happening around therapy centers. I'm not just talking about north of India, I'm talking about the south here as well. Any place, okay? Because in the name of therapies, in the name of, they are constantly looting parents, and the parents out of emotion thinking that, wow, I think this my son or my daughter will get got. They are getting duped. So a little bit about your journey.
Yes. So I have done my medicine in Bangalore, and following which, again, I became a pediatrician after doing my DNB, and of course, in between, got married, had kids. So
How many children?
I have 2 children. So the elder one is 20, the second one is 14. So my journey into this foray of developmental pediatrics was something that I hadn't planned. This was because of my son. So when
The elder one or the younger one?
younger one, so the elder one is a daughter. Yeah. So the second one, when we realized he was not speaking, he was not very interested to participate in things. We started feeling, yes, something is different. Although my older one also took some time to speak, but she was very interactive, and the moment we put her into a preschool, she kind of opened up and started talking and things like that. So it was something like that, but we felt there was a difference. We felt he was just a quiet kid. There were issues like fussy eating habits, and we took a lot of time to settle him into places. But since it was not very traumatic, we didn't really look at it as as a problem, especially the family. But as he grew up, once he covered 2 years, 2.5, as usual, the thing comes about, okay, put him into a preschool, he'll start talking and all that thing. So the same thing happened in my family too. So, and I identify with parents who say the same thing now. But at that point, even as a pediatrician, my knowledge about how to screen for these children, how can we look for red flag signs, and all were very poor. I wasn't, these things are not taught or not given that kind of importance. It's not that you can't read about it. Of course, you have the freedom and the books to read about these things, but it's not considered as a mainstream thing.
I would say that in this discussion, we'll try to answer those questions which still people are trying to figure out answers for. There are some set of questions which maybe I have to ask again in the capacity myself as being a parent, and also in the capacity of on behalf of all the parents who may be having these kind of questions. So again, you being a parent yourself and a doctor yourself, firstly, I have the question is that, so someone who is hearing the term for the first time, developmental pediatrician, okay, how are they different from a regular pediatrician? If you can explain
Yes.
the difference.
Yes. So the first thing is we are pediatricians who gone through that entire process of becoming a pediatrician, getting their post graduation and everything,
Right.
but moved into a sphere of looking at child development. Okay, and in extension, the behavioral aspects. So when we're looking at children, the development is very important in the first 5 years, right? Right from the time they are born till 5 years is the period of development. This is actual brain growth. But development does not stop there. Development continues even into their adolescence till they become a mature adult, right? But it is about the sphere where the effectiveness of doing something that is very crucial in the first 5 years. So our journey starts from that, from the time the child is born. So especially when there are preterms, so there are preterms who are born at various ages now, and they require our help because preterms are at a little higher risk. Preterms are premature babies.
Premature.
Babies born at 26 weeks, 28 weeks, 32 weeks. And now that NICUs have become very good, the ability of these children to survive and to lead a normal life is very good, right? Earlier in the past, say 20, 30 years back, the NICUs were not so well equipped. So many of these babies who were born before time either had severe problems or they would die, right? The mortality was very high. But now that is not the case. Most of the hospitals have NICU care, that is NICU care, and these babies actually survive, and many of them do not have many problems. But even the slightest problems, if we can identify them early and give them the help, that is very good in terms of their quality of life. So when we are dealing with developmental pediatricians, we are not dealing with life-threatening situations or emergency care. We are purely into this phase of how do you develop a child and how can you improve their quality of life. What can you do in the early life that will reduce the amount of disability and that will improve the way they can participate in their regular life.
Okay, fair enough. So, at what point does a parent usually decides to visit a developmental pediatrician?
So unfortunately, in our country, the awareness of people like us that we are practicing in this aspect is very low. And the problem is most of us are also concentrated in urban setups, right? Where little bit parent awareness is better. So some of the parents, they do walk in, but most of our parents only come in when they're referred by other pediatricians or they are referred by the school or somebody who has noticed that the child is not doing certain things. So that could be family members or teachers or neighbors, something like that. But yes, the awareness is very poor. So basically, we're just starting up. The journey of developmental pediatrics in India is very recent. Although
How old is it?
probably I should say in the last 10 years or so.
Okay.
That's it. Because even in the world, this division of developmental pediatrics and all, even in US and all that, they started only in the 1970s.
In 1970, it started developmental pediatrician.
70s. Yeah,
1970s. And in India, it started 10 years back.
Yeah, 10 years back. Because although there were few people who were interested in the sphere of developmental pediatrics, the Academy of the Indian Academy and everybody thought that is part of the regular pediatrician's job. And that's fair enough because as a pediatrician, you are taught how to look at the development also. And we all did that. It's not that. But the thing is, after that, what? And even as a pediatrician, when I practiced in my own setup, I didn't know what could I do if a child has this problem. We know there are certain centers, so you tell them, but it depends on the parents whether they'll be interested to go there. Because the stigma associated with my child is not doing something is very high in our country. And I don't think that is isolated in our country. It's isolated anywhere in the world.
I get it. So typically at what age normally you see, what is the average age when you start getting children?
Yes. So the problem is, since I work mostly in a private setup, my referrals are usually between 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years.
They get you get referred cases like
Yes.
2 to 3 years.
Yes.
And how long is your practice?
My practice is approximately 6 years old,
Acha.
or in developmental
I
pediatrics.
see.
But before that, I was just working as a regular pediatrician.
Got it. Got it.
So, as I told you, I had difficulties at home. So that's when my journey started into actually looking into, okay, what can be done. So I started my son on therapies at the age of 3 years, and then I realized my involvement is very much required. So we were kind of working with him at home, taking him for therapies, also making him part of a preschool, because I realized some amount of socializing skills and all that come up with. But I did request the school, the preschool, that he needs support. So they did provide me a teacher who would, help him to do his activities. So after 5-6 years, after he turned 5-6 years, when he was almost ready to go to a mainstream, that is when I thought, okay, I have to make myself, little more aware, and that's when I think the fellowships and all started coming up in different universities, and also the IAP also started a fellowship. So that's when I thought, okay, let me be a little more qualified and then see what I can do. So that's where my journey started. So this aspect of practicing in developmental pediatrics has only been in the last 5-6 years.
I see. Acha. One more question which I have is, autism increasing, or are we just getting better at identifying it?
That's a $1 million question, because I would say even the population is increasing. So we know in any population, there is 1 to 2% with disabilities, right? So autism also has its own way of manifesting in the population, which is increasing. So definitely there will be more numbers. And awareness is increasing. So therefore, yes, the milder cases are also being detected.
Again, there are mild, moderate, severe. That's how you identify.
Yes.
So, just for the context, so there is a smoker and a non-smoker.
Yes.
There's an alcoholic and a non-alcoholic.
Yes.
It is so simply defined. Why is it there's an autism, not non-autism?
Yeah.
So why have the terms not been simplified? Because mild, moderate, severe, and there are so many things. Either a person or an individual has autism, or they don't have an autism.
Yes.
I mean, it's a very simple demarcation.
Yes.
Yeah. So instead of creating, because I don't know why have these terms created, can't it be kept simple? That's what my question was. Because why? Yeah.
Yeah. So let me answer that. So according to DSM-5, right, there are certain criteria by which medical personnel diagnose a person with autism. Now, there is, beyond the diagnosis, is the severity. Okay. Now, the severity of autism is based on how well this person can function in society. Now, this is very subjective to how a child or a person can understand how to conduct themselves in regular life. So, when you have autism, as you grow, your cognitive abilities, your abilities to learn things, the ability to mask your symptoms, everything is growing, right? So, once a child is diagnosed with autism, I don't think it is important to note what is the severity at that point. Because at that point, invariably, they will have more symptoms because they've not been given any kind of help. So, at that point, it's just whether you have these symptoms or you don't have these symptoms. Just keep the classification very simple. But as you grow, you notice that this person is able to do this with some difficulty, with great difficulty. So that is when it makes more sense to classify with this kind of severity, because it is mainly a functional classification. It is nothing to do with the density of autism, because we don't know why autism occurs in the first place, right? We all know it's biological, means you have the tendency to have, and now we know that you can't just, the severity of autism is not just based on one assessment. you have to do multiple assessments at multiple time periods as this person is growing up.
If you can tell me the assessment and the time period at which it has to be done.
So most of the time, yes, autism is generally diagnosed before 3 years.
Okay, that's
Okay.
first. Okay.
That's the thing. Then an assessment generally at the school entry.
That's around
That
3.5, 3.5.
No. School entries, I'm not talking about kindergarten. I'm talking about the grade school. So between 6 to 7 years, meaning grade 1, grade 2,
Great.
that kind
Fine,
of thing.
fine.
So that is time, because that time you can also do an IQ to see the cognitive abilities. Because before 5 years, you only do a developmental assessment. Of course, you can score it based on the ability, the functional ability of the child. But beyond that, after 6 to 7, you can actually start doing an IQ test.
Okay.
So that is when you do one kind of an assessment, and then you can do one around 10 to 9 to 10 years, when they are actually moving from primary to middle school, right? And then definitely, if they require any supports and all that, and if you're going for UDID and all, there will be assessments then. So I think UDID, they do a 10, 14, 18. So by the time they get their permanent UDID. So there are multiple assessments being done for a child, and it is very important to monitor. So what happens in our kind of country is, many of the children who have autism or who have these features, they do receive a diagnosis, but as we know, autism is autism. It's a spectrum.
Yes.
So many children as they grow up, they do improve. They do a lot of activities, and then parents forget about it altogether. They don't come for a follow up, and we don't understand what kind of difficulties the child is going through.
So my question is, how long is the intervention of a DP?
So we are
Because I think
pediatricians.
you go from child to the adolescence, right? You look at every
Yes,
level.
yes.
Okay. Cool.
So we are pediatricians. So a pediatrician can see a child from 0 to 18.
0 to 80.
18. So that's a childhood, right? So in adults, so earlier pediatricians, so if you say the old age pediatricians, even when we were children, pediatricians used to only see up to 12 years. Beyond that, we used to, go to the physician. Yeah. But now the realm of pediatrician is also increased to
I see.
18 years. So you can take a child who's a 16 or 17-year-old also to the pediatrician.
So typically, what do you do in this assessment? What do you check all of this?
So our assessments basically in the early ages is to see the developmental outcomes in the different domains of development. That is your motor development, your language development, your fine motor development, your social development. So these are the different aspects of development that is very important till 5 years. And beyond that, it is about the abilities, right? What are they finding? So we can do an IQ assessment, we can do an educational, a screening. So these are the things that DP generally does. Of course, for more lengthy assessments and more, and we also use the help of a clinical psychologist, so that they do the assessments in detail. But we have to flag these kind of difficulties so that the right tool is used, and it's done in a systematic manner. And behavioral is another aspect. Of course, we also take the help of the psychiatrist if a child is in the adolescent age also. But the earlier behaviors and all that, we like in a younger child with autism, ADHD, learning problems, we also work with the parents closely.
Okay. So do you also cross-examine the parents whether they are also having any neurological conditions?
It's a very sticky topic because many times things do occur in our minds when we are talking, but again, it's very difficult to broach these topics with parents. So we do ask them, just how do you feel? They do tell us they feel stressed, and we just hint, do you want to take help? And they just look at us because mental health is a big stigma in our country. So many times parents feel they can manage. I've seen cases where mothers do, especially because somehow childcare is still a very much maternal prerogative in our country. Mothers burning out, mothers going through difficult times, and especially
never ask
families
you for the
not
help.
supporting. No, one or two mothers have asked me. That's it.
That's it.
That's
Do
it.
you think that mothers should ask for help?
Yes, they should.
Why do you think that they should ask for help?
No, it's the same thing. It's a stigma attached. So they
Because
don't.
they think that asking
If
for
your
help is something which will
because,
lower the
the
dignity.
father may just look this way and roll his eyes, or the family may not accept that she's taking help. So this is very common in our societies.
Okay. So you do the role of a counselor as well.
My main role
Role is
is
as a
counseling,
counselor,
not informing them, telling them, giving them ideas, asking them to go for this kind of therapy. So that is my job, because I don't do any therapy myself.
So can a child be wrongly labeled as an autistic?
Very possible, especially if you don't have that knowledge of what you need to look for. And this is a common thing that's happening nowadays because of, therapy is becoming a very inward now. And, many places have opened up where, see, if you are a therapist, you are trained to do certain jobs, but you may not be adequately trained to do other things, right? And this is when children may get wrong labels, because the person who's looking after the child or who's offering therapy may not be equipped enough to give that label. And it's very important that whenever they deal with, it's important to stick to their profession. Okay, and they advise and counsel the parents that, see, I'm doing this for your child, but this aspect I have a doubt. Please go to a particular person who is professionally capable of giving you a brighter picture.
Once you know that the child is on the spectrum, there are so many therapies which the parents are going. Plus, there are therapies like sound therapy, aromatherapy, this therapy, that therapy, and the parents are, oh, go to music therapy, go to this therapy and that therapy. And this is something which, how do you guide parents who are overwhelmed with too many therapies?
Yes.
Because sometimes an OT therapy, the speech therapy, there's some therapy or the other therapy is going on and on.
True.
So they are overwhelmed with therapies. Plus, one is that you have to take that person to the therapy center, sit there for some time. And at the same time, you're also thinking that, oh, this is the total cost of the therapies by the end of this month. The pockets are also getting impacted.
Yes.
So how do you guide? How do you do a Pareto kind of a thing that these 20% of therapies will give you 80% of the result? Do you have that mode of,
Yeah, unfortunately, I really hope there was something like that. But just like we have many Indias in India, therapies are also very much, tailor-made.
tailor-made?
Tailor-made.
Okay.
So
why do you say so?
that is because every child with autism is different. So you have an autistic child with a normal intelligence. You have an autistic child with little borderline intelligence. You have an autistic child with low cognitive abilities. You have an autistic child with lot of sensory issues. You have an autistic child with very severe fine motor issues. You have an autistic child with a lot of health issues. So you can't just label a child and just leave it. That is why people like us exist. So when we are seeing the child, we look into all these aspects.
You're a doctor, right? Do you also, like you said, that you work with psychiatrists?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense we do.
You
give
do
them a call.
discussions
Yes,
and all.
Yes.
The same way, I'm sure that there are so many centers like OTs coming up, speech therapies, are so many centers are coming up. And sometimes the parents doesn't even think to go to a speech doctor, because the doctor will give a label or a psychiatrist will give a label, but these therapy centers will never give a labable.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, my son has no problems. This speech therapy is going on. He'll
Very
be
true.
fine.
Very
So so now one person, I think everybody knows that, autism cannot be cured. It is something which has to be managed and coped, okay, as per different interventions. How, is there a regulatory body who controls these therapy centers? because there is a lot of lies, there are a lot of scams which are happening around therapy centers. I'm not just talking about north of India, I'm talking about the south here as well. Any place, okay? Because in the name of therapies, in the name of, they are constantly looting parents, and the parents out of emotion thinking that, wow, I think this my son or my daughter will get cured. They are getting duped.
Yes.
So how do you, as a PDP, do you also recommend that go to this person or go to that person, or why a person should come to a DP before going to a therapy center?
Yes. So basically, as I told you, my primary goal as a DP is to make parents aware. Now, one thing is I should put it across to them that the label or whatever we are talking about, autism, ADHD, and all these things, are basically to give a understanding of these are the set of symptoms. Now, there is a lot of overlap of lot of neurodevelopmental issues, right? An autistic child may have some ADHD symptoms. An ADHD child may have some autistic symptoms. An ADHD child may have learning problems. An autistic child can have intellectual difficulty. So, a lot of symptoms overlap, right? So, therefore, when we are looking at therapies, it is basically a mode of developing skills.
Mode of developing skills.
Yeah, it is not for the disorder. It is not for anything in particular. Because we know that a child should be able to communicate. We know that the child should reply to somebody. We should know a child should be able to hold objects and control how he's holding and releasing and things like that. We know that the child should understand some social greetings. Now, these are all the skills. Now, when we are saying therapy, we know that a particular therapist is equipped enough to develop those skills in that child. Okay, so although loosely we just say speech therapy, OT, and all that, it is very specific to develop those particular skills, because a person is not just only because he's communicating.
So does a OT and a speech therapist come and speak to you about the interventions? Are they in touch with you, or they do it independently?
So most of the times, because all of us work in silos, and one therapy center will not try to get in touch with a DP, and very rarely do you find a speech therapist referring a patient, because everybody is worried about, oh, my patient will go away from me. This is one common problem.
So don't you think that it will solve the problem better? Because let's say if a DP says that, because I think we all are independent, you guys are working independently, right? So if there is, because again, I can't say that it's like one road.
Yes.
And in that one road, there are so many different people who are going to come. But the people who will be meeting on this road will only help you
for a particular thing.
So from the lens which I am looking at is that it's a mutually exclusive.
Yeah. So this is what we call transdisciplinary.
Transdisciplinary.
Yes.
What exactly does that mean?
Yeah. So transdisciplinary is exactly what you spoke about. When there is a person overlooking and going through many things at one point, and that is the role of the DP. So we've all heard of this term multidisciplinary, where a doctor says, okay, you go to this person, that person says go to this person, and that it is like you are visiting multiple disciplines, but it is like in a sequence. This is at one point, what are the things that are required? You do that and you coordinate. Now, this is exactly what should happen to a child with developmental delay, but it's not happening.
So is there a regulatory body overseas? Because see, in India, we are still trying to work around an ecosystem which can help a child navigate a particular place where he kind of stays independent and learns all the skills while he's developing. But again, you can answer this question if you wish. Is there greed involved here? Because there are so many therapy centers.
No, it's not about the greed involved. It's basically the involvement of the government and the public sector.
So one part is government, public sector, but the other part is that
you know that, no? 85% of medical care is private in India. 85%
is private.
Okay. Only 15% of our population can avail of some government facilities or government. Have you seen government hospitals? Now, in a place like that, how do you think we are talking about development? Because development, but people but saying that, I must say the people in the government sector are doing a great job. I mean, whatever little means they have, they're trying their best to help so many people, but that's not enough.
That's not enough because we've got a huge population. My
Yes.
question with you is that 85% is private, right? Private, why? Because they know that they have the autonomy. They can be the movers and shakers. They can do whatever they wish to because they are creating in their own boundaries, right?
Yes.
And that's where it gives the authority. You have your own private practice, but I think your intent is very, very, noble because you also have a son who is on the spectrum and you know this pain yourself, and that is the reason why you want no parent to go through what you have gone through. Okay,
Yes.
and you want as early as possible the detection to happen and the milestones of the child to get achieved.
Yes.
But I'm talking about the therapy centers and the speech therapists and the occupational therapists because they think that they know already what the DEP knows
Yes.
and the psychiatrist knows. I'm talking about them. Is there a regulatory body over them? Because there are so many centers who are
So
just
my question to you is there a regulatory body for preschools in India?
for preschools.
Preschools in India.
Okay.
Is it there? No.
I don't think so.
Every second street you have a preschool. You can open a preschool in a building without even a playground, right? So this is the sad part because here we are talking about the quality of life. We are not talking about any disease process which is killing you or making you, lose. Because here, childcare and child development is still a very, very, it depends on the family, it depends on the.
So there is a very famous dialogue in India कि बच्चे पैदा किए हैं तो पल जाएंगे अपने आप ही.
Exactly.
So it is the thought process is that getting a child, growing up a child is very easy.
Easy.
And most of the things is
And
already
that happens in 85% typical children. That's
and
what
India has been
happens.
stereotyped and typecasted like Mother India है, भारत माँ तो बहुत amazing है, माँ तो माँ होती है, कर लेगी कुछ ना कुछ. But I think it's a team effort. Both the parents need to be there and ensure that
Yeah.
the child is growing up in the best possible manner.
And most of our, like, if you say our mothers now, especially in the urban setup, they're working. They have multiple roles.
Yes.
And child rearing is not done in the very traditional way. So this is where we are having difficulties when there is a little atypical development happening. So who is going to care for this child? What is happening?
I
So-
can't. I am working. I can't. You can't. I am working. So the first part is that who's going to take that lead?
Yes.
Even that lead is missing out, and I've seen so many separation cases happening.
Exactly.
Couples getting divorced.
So this is where the fear of what happens when the diagnosis is given and all these things, and parents look for shortcuts to help their child, so they don't want the diagnosis.
I'm sure that you have read the signals also that why parents want shortcuts.
Oh, that's what, see, as I told you, stigma is still attached to a lot
Okay.
of these things.
Yeah, it's a stigma again.
Yes. And many of these places where they go, the full picture is not given. So they think this is it. If they do this much, it will be fine. They don't, some of them tell me, we didn't know there was a pediatrician called a developmental pediatrician.
This isn't like an excuse.
Yeah. So this is also there. And of course, our pediatricians themselves, they are not aware that a particular developmental pediatrician is actually practicing in that area. And they don't give referrals also at the right time. So the awareness among pediatricians also in our country
Is very less.
is very less.
Very, very less. So again, since I have so many things to discuss further, one message which you want to have the parents, because see again, I think they are all in denial. Autism will cure. Some baba, some totka, somebody or the other will cure because I am 100% sure it's my son, my daughter. How can this happen to me?
Exactly.
I'll fight with God. So again, if long story short, what is your message to the parents and what should their attitude be? Because just because I've got a cut, keeping a kapda on it will not help me.
Help, yes.
Okay, or maybe if there is something, for example, I got detected with cancer and then no, I don't have cancer and I'm in denial. The cancer will not cure. It will completely ruin my life.
Exactly.
So anything which is a similar kind of message which you want the parents to hear, who understand or listen autism for the first time
Yeah.
and still are in denial,
Yes.
your message to them.
So I wouldn't even go for denial part because for me, it's a step before that.
Okay.
Because for me, it is when you are preparing to have a child, at least we're talking about the urban where, a child is welcomed after sometimes after a couple of years of marriage and all that. It's not just your antenatal care and all those kind of things. Start preparing even to understand how this child is going to grow up. So simple things like developmental milestones. And developmental milestones don't stop when the child is just walking. Because most of the parents are very, even I see in my clinic, till 1 year, they're very particular, that my child is smiling, my child is sitting, my child is walking. And then it's all lost.
Because the
But
vaccination
unfortunately-
period is over, na?
Yes.
Because there's a time when where vaccination happens. That's when they
Exactly.
show the doctors.
Yes.
They're very, very serious. Oh, this very, very critical, because that is the time. That is the kind of awareness is there.
Yes.
But after that,
Yes.
suddenly they
So the milestones checklist is something that I think parents should refer to frequently.
where is the milestone checklist?
Oh, there are millions of them.
Can you give me some resources so that I
yes.
can pin it in the description?
Yes. So which I usually give is the CDC, that is by the
Center of Diseases.
control. So by the AAP. So they have a milestone checklist, which I use quite frequently to give it even to regular parents. Sometimes they do come, just to see, okay, is my child going well? And if there is a factor or there's something that is, question their pediatricians. Why is my child? How long can I wait for my child to do this? And then follow it up. Because what happens, they do question. I hear parents, I've told my pediatrician, but they don't follow it up. So after 2 months, after 3 months, if the child is not doing something, demand a service. Demand that, no, my child is still not doing something. And this is very important in the early ages.
How does it happen? Because most of the parents are actually working professionals. They have their own tensions.
Yeah,
Plus AI coming in.
true. That's
Job
what I said.
challenges.
So, the checklist is easy, no?
The checklist is easy.
Checklist is easy. So
The
if you
checklist should be kept somewhere in the
Yes,
house
it should
to be visible.
It is just in your child's file,
I
in your
see.
medical file. You can just download it, take a PDF, or do something, or even. And nowadays they have a lot of online trackers also.
So,
So the same CDC has the online tracker, and I think many people have also developed trackers. But you can choose anything. See, because there are some basic, stepping stones that the child should do it. Even we have our Trivandrum checklist developed by Dr. M.K.C. Nair. But all these things are usually there in the vaccination card, but nobody turns the page other than the vaccination sticker. Nobody turns the page and looks at the development part. So my message is, please follow milestones very regularly till at least 5 years.
till at least 5 years.
Till at least 5 years, because that's when your brain development is complete. The brain is highly neuroplastic. Of course, we are neuroplastic till the time we die, but still it's highly neuroplastic in the first 5 years. And any small signs you see, take it seriously. Do not negate it. Do not try to find an excuse for it. COVID baby, too much of screen time. I mean, all these
It's
are
not there.
it's all
These
there.
are not the these are the reasons for the developmental conditions.
See, that's
Or
what I
are they
said.
not?
Developmental condition is a biological cause.
Acha, this is not because of the screen time.
No. Screen time is part of,
It can aggravate.
it is part of your lifestyle. Correct? Tell me a child in this age who's not looking at the screen. There is ample evidence you are watching screens and yet you can be normal. Right? Even if
So there is something called adult ADHD, adult autism. There are some things which are happening that this person is having virtual autism. Suddenly the person is having so
Yeah,
many
but
screens and you're
none of
like
these
getting your
things-
behaviors are getting.
none of these things are scientifically proven. We
Proven.
don't have evidence for it. But yes, they do say that a person who is, in that process of getting a particular problem can have lot of certain behaviors. Now, these behaviors can be aggravated if you're going through, say, a lot of screen time, right? So it's like the chicken and egg story. Which came first? Okay. So obviously you will see a person who prefer to be by himself, who likes, sensory stimulation, getting addicted to the screen. Now, is it this that is causing this?
Yes or no? No, yes, no. It is not.
We don't know.
Actually, you don't know.
No, it's not proven.
It's not proven yet.
So don't tell me that before screen time there was no autism. That is not there. No, it is.
It is there.
So if you can't say that because of the increased screen time, but because a child prefers to be on his own, prefers to keep looking at the screen, that is one of the common things that the parent is seeing.
So that's one of the excuses which parents are actually telling themselves that
Exactly.
because of the screen, my child has
Yeah.
behavior.
So instead,
So that's another form of saying that I'm in denial.
yeah, exactly. So this is where, so why should the child be on the screen? Why don't you play with the child?
Ah.
That is the first question. So why, instead of the screen, why didn't you play with the child? So let's take out the screens first. So that's my first advice when I see a child. Remove all screen time. Because let the child have that social interaction, so it changes.
There's
all.
one more analogy which I can say, that a screen is very easy to control. Pets are very easy to control because they are someone who will obey you, or naturally they are. But when a human to human conversation is happening, it is an unpredictable place where the other person's reply I may not have the answer. And because of that, I'm not just talking about neurodivergent population, I'm talking about the neurotypical population. Even they are like, no, we don't want to talk. And I call it the imposter syndrome. They like in big conference, they like, don't want to talk.
But then
Because there is an unpredictability from the other end which is coming.
that is there. Life is unpredictable.
Yes.
So that is not an excuse for not helping somebody who needs our help. So the main thing my parents can do is get aware. When you're going to become parents, get aware that there are things that I have to do for a long, long time, even after my child is born. And then find the right people, or ask your pediatrician, or who can I visit if I'm seeing this as a problem.
So from this conversation, I understood that the role of a DP is so important, but the population of DP is so less.
Yeah, it will improve. Don't worry.
So
Over
the
time.
ones who are already listening to this podcast, more than a pediatrician, you should visit a developmental pediatrician.
Oh no, your pediatrician is your lifeline.
One particular part is the pediatrician for all the healthy needs, but when talking about the other portion, which is the developmental part, especially when there are some of the things which you have identified and you want to figure out, so you better come to a DP rather than going to an astrologer. So please use science and common sense as the forefront to ensure that your child is growing up and having a nice and a safe life. So thank you so much once again,
Thank
Dr.
you for having me.